Welcome to Dialogues for Change. Life is not a void to be filled. It is a plenitude to be discovered. Today, I would like to share with you some beautiful insights by Rebecca Redwood French, taken from her book, The Legal Cosmology of Buddhist Tibet. The extract that I want to share with you shows that law is not only a set of techniques, of rules, of norms, but it actually is an expression of a certain world vision. Michel Alliot, a French legal anthropologist, used to say, "Dis-moi comment tu penses le monde, et je te dirai comment tu penses le droit." Tell me how you think the world, and I will tell you how you think law. Here is what Rebecca Redwood French tells us. She starts with a quotation of Stanley G. Tambert. "Cosmological categories are embedded in the rituals I shall describe. They chart the geography and define the architecture of space, and are expressed in the material symbols that are manipulated in the rituals. In the rituals, we see cosmology in action." Then she continues. "An American law professor recently asked me, 'So, Rebecca, what was the Tibetan law of torts?' His question makes sense in the context of legal treatises that discuss legal institutions, move on to substantive legal rules and procedures, describe appellate and Supreme Court cases of interest, and analyze the current state of a particular legal category, that is, in the way American lawyers typically construct and define what is important in their own and other legal systems. Indeed, they will say that this is what constitutes law." What the law professor's question does not recognize are all the practical and conceptual assumptions that American lawyers already know about the world and about the law. The dimensions of space and time, the subtleties of legal myth and narrative, the legal rituals that define how actors act, speak, and move in a legal forum, social hierarchies that influence their decisions, the aspects of authority, power, and legitimation which they understand. But what if most or all of these practical and conceptual assumptions were not only different from those that apply in Tibet, but arranged in networks or sets of relations that were also entirely different? What if when one first asked Tibetans about law, they said that no such category existed? There is rarely a simple one-to-one correspondence whereby a legal category or activity in one society matches that of another society. Instead, the legal anthropologist must ask different sorts of questions. What activities result in disputes? What form do the disputes take? What conceptual assumptions inform the process? Who are the actors and what do they do? What do they tell you about what they are doing? How does this relate to other aspects of their social life? But surely, the American professor counted upon hearing this explanation. This is all too complicated. Let me ask you a simple property question instead. What did a deed to land look like in Tibet? Since most Tibetans in pre-1959 Buddhist Tibet did have written deeds to their land, this question, unlike the one on torts, can be answered directly. But again, look at the assumptions that underwrite it. The professor assumes that Tibetans could sell or trade such deeds. They usually could not. That the deeds could be drafted privately. They could not. That land was valued by measured area. It was not. That a person was taxed for it. Not necessarily. And that the living person owned it. Not always. In Tibet, incarnations in the intermediate state between death and reincarnation remain the actual owners of their property. To respond then that Tibetans did have written deeds to land, or even to list their contents, would result in an essentially incorrect answer, because those deeds were understood inside a set of completely different assumptions. For the law professor to understand the Tibetan legal system would require that he come to appreciate not only the tacit assumptions that shape and motivate his own worldview, but those that shape and motivate the Tibetan legal system. He will have to be conscious not only of his own legal cosmology, but of Tibetan legal cosmology as well. Explaining a cosmology of law begins with the aspects of a society that are least commonly assumed to be important to an understanding of the legal system, namely the elements of the cultural backdrop that have an impact on the law. As Stanley Tambier puts it in the epigraph above, cosmological categories are embedded in the rituals. These cosmological categories, these conceptual and practical building blocks that structure legal reasoning and action, will vary from one group or society to another. Non-Western ideas of reality and illusion, karma, the cyclical nature of rebirth, non-duality, and multiple concepts of time and causation directly affect Tibetan understandings of the nature of law. The practice of law in Tibet is also structured by the shape of the legal language, which is filled with proverbs and phrases from 17th century law codes, by the ranked social categories and power dimensions of the actors, by the use of such legal devices as rolling dice, the general requirement of getting together ceremony after a trial, and the belief that calming the mind and demonstrating inner morality are essential parts of the legal process. These are very different basic assumptions from those of an American law professor. The chapters in this part are an attempt to map the basic cosmology of Tibetan law. Doing so entails not only setting out the basic concepts and practices, but displaying the interrelated constellations, their historical location, their creative use, and then comparing them to concepts and practices with which we have some familiarity. The legal ethnographer tells what she does and does not know, and presents the material from as many different angles and as many different forms and voices as possible. The result is not a totalizing, glossy image or an ordered cultural patterning, but an appreciation for the difference, the contradictions, the discontinuous nature of the space that law occupies in another society. I hope that these little insights started to make you think about some of the assumptions you may have on your own way of living, your own law, your own rules and norms, your own culture. If you want to deepen it, I really recommend to have a deeper look at this beautiful book on the legal cosmology of Buddhist Tibet. And I hope that these thoughts have inspired you on this Thursday, 14th of June, 2012. Thank you.